My mission is how can I support and empower women. Started my first company in 2008 called Navin, an apparel brand with my twin sister. We co-founded, and then later on we partnered with Revolve Clothing. And I started it in my front room. My best friend was my only employee and my assistant. And we ended up growing it to a really big multi-million-dollar company. We had 40 employees selling to 500 stores. It became a celebrity brand. There's a big question that just overarching in life, you should always ask yourself every single day, what fuels my soul? I made a lot of money, more money than I've ever really made in my life. Had all the things that someone could want when they think about building a dream career life, but I wasn't fulfilled inside. And I was constantly looking for more and more stimulation everywhere. I was filling the void of the work I really had to do.
Even after you made these shifts, it's not like you've stepped back from your success. I mean, you were on billboards on Sunset in New York. So at what point did you make those shifts within yourself?
The biggest mind shift for me is I am not my story. And the most liberating thing is unattaching from that and creating a new narrative. Love is my life language. My presence, it's actually this beautiful, loving environment instead of chaotic. Especially as women, because we are just dialed into this creation energy, because we can create life. We can create any narrative we want. So why focus on some bad story from the past when we have this whole future?
So often with stories, we assume the story is true. And especially if it's something that we've lived our whole lives or a narrative that we've been told our whole lives, it's really hard for us to know what the story is and if it's a story.
That's the thing, is every bad relationship, every trauma, every hurdle that you overcome, those are all part of the life lessons. My compassion, my love, my soul that people should really care about, rather than what can I add to your life like a checklist. Seeing how someone can just be with you when you're maybe not at your highest peak and see how that chemistry reacts. I mean, that's a really good telltale sign. I think it's actually a good test, honestly.
Discipline is also having the discipline to prioritize yourself and the discipline to show up for yourself.
Doing less and being more intentional and creating space was the biggest value that I found. Not how much you're doing, but how you do it.
We always look for role models. We always look for somebody to look up to.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they say if you're on a journey or you're walking a path and the steps in front of you are present or visible, you're not necessarily walking your own path. And when you create a path for yourself and you're doing it from inside, you're doing it internally, you're not watching someone else and following in their footsteps. So do you want to touch a little bit on how you've done that?
Yes, I love this.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we have an incredible guest with us, Alexis McClay. She's a serial entrepreneur and the co-founder and CEO of KOA Life. And we're so excited to hear her story and have her share a little bit more about her journey with you. Alexis, do you want to introduce yourself?
I would love to. Thanks, Morgan. And so thrilled to be here and excited to share a little bit about my life with everyone listening. So first and foremost, I would say I'd like to introduce myself as one of your very good friends. And I like to say soul sister. We've been through a lot in our journeys together and been so blessed to see each other evolve and grow and really been pivotal in each other's lives in that way. So it's been such a gift. So
a gift for me as well. So thank you. Yeah. Thank you for your friendship.
Of course. And then second, I'm a serial entrepreneur. Everything I do has to do around leading women, empowering women. I really am about girl power. That's everything that I do. And I co-founded KOA Life, which is a women's wellness company with my twin sister. We've actually co-founded 3 companies together now. So everything is in the women's space, including being a philanthropist and activist for women's causes. So it's all about female-led for me.
I love that. And something I've been very honored by in our friendship together is the way that you've shown up in sisterhood. I know that that has to do a lot with your personal mission and your brand, but also it's who you are and who you embody. And it's the way that you've shown up for me in our 6-year friendship. And I think, you know, a lot of times people are a little bit scared to have conflict in friendships, right? Or disagree. But I really appreciate the space that you've held for me as a container, because that's where we grow. So do you want to touch a little bit on the perspective that you have on friendship.
Yeah. Wow. First of all, 6 years, just thinking about how long that's been, especially in a place like Los Angeles, where there's a lot of transient people here. So we are very, very blessed to say that we have this beautiful history and friendship. And you're right. There has been ups and downs, and we've kept each other accountable. And it's so beautiful that we care about each other like sisters, that we continue to kind of have each other's back, to encourage each other's growth, and just want to see each other stay on the best possible path possible. So I'd say when I look at our relationship, I think that the reasons we have this long legacy and we've been able to have this history is, number one, we have honest communication. And I know you and I both kind of pride ourselves now on that together. Being an identical twin, I don't really know anything different, but my whole life has been around having this like check and balance with my dynamic with my sister, which is a beautiful thing. You know, we keep each other accountable. We kind of are a reflection or a mirror of the areas in which we need to be healed or work on or grow. And I think I took that into our friendship as well. So number one, just having this honest communication and being able to, in a compassionate way, call each other out, have a check-in and be like, how can I show up more for you? How can you show up more for me? And really taking accountability and helping the other person take accountability. I think a lot of times, especially with females, instead of being super honest like that, there's not that trust, and it's almost like a competitive thing. So people don't get as deep as you would say you were dealing with a sister. So I think that shift is going to be a very beneficial one in female dynamics if people can just be honest and communicate and platonic relationships. And then I would say number two is, like I said, compassion. No matter where we're at in life, we have compassion with the other person. We're like, I know that you are doing the best you can with where you're at, and vice versa. One of the things I've noticed that you've been doing lately, which I love, and I'd love to hear from you where this came from, is you've been checking in with me all the time saying, how can I show up more for you? This is how you can show up more for me. And I just love that approach. And I'm just so curious as to where that came from, because I know it's something new you've been adopting, and I love it.
I love that. I love that you've known me long enough to know that that's a new aspect of my friendship, or the way I'm showing up in friendship. So I think a couple things, just a quick reaction to what you said is that I love that you do it with love. So, you show up with love in the way that you give feedback. And I think, again, a lot of times it's really hard for people to hear feedback because it's not a criticism of them. It's just a reflection of their internal state and the way that that mirrors out to the world. And sometimes we don't know how we mirror out to the world. And so I love that you always do it with love when you give feedback. And so, it's not that it makes it easier to receive, because I don't want to discourage anyone from giving feedback bluntly, but at the same time, it's like, you love me enough to give me feedback. And I think a lot of times in female friendships, there's like, you don't always want to share the feedback, and then because you're worried about how it's going to impact your friendship, and then ultimately it creates a rift in the friendship, and then the person can't grow and the friendship dissolves, right? For me, to answer your question, I just realized that there's always room for growth. And a lot of times, the things that we think that we've worked on, the things that we think that we've solved in ourselves, we may not have necessarily solved in ourselves. And a lot of times it can come up in ways that are subtle, that it's not until somebody calls you out on it that you realize it. And then once you realize it, you're like, oh, wow, I do this all the time. And so I had a call with somebody and I was like, okay, how do I work on this? And my friend was like, you need to surround yourself with less like hype men, hype women, and more people who hold you accountable. But the thing with accountability is that it opens you up to a lot of vulnerability. So you really have to ask for accountability with people that you trust and that have your best interest at heart. So obviously that was you.
Yeah. And that's so true. I think that trust piece, it creates security, safety. For me, abandonment issues just in my personal life has been a big thing. And so I kind of choose to treat people the way I want to be treated at this point in my life. I can't say I was always perfect with that, but at this point. And so when I look at you, I want you to feel safe and like you're a sister to me, and that I will have your back and I'm not going to abandon you. You don't have to question if I love you. You don't have to question if I'm going to be there. You can be your full authentic self, because you know that I'm going to show up for you and be there for you no matter what, even if you're fully vulnerable and truthful to me. So I'm really proud of, honestly, how far our relationship has come.
Me too. I love that. And I love the fact that you said, I can trust that you're going to be there for me, because I definitely feel that's true. Like even when we've had, and I've grown a lot as a person. So sometimes like some of the areas that maybe we disagreed on at one point, I've come back and changed my perspective on, or I've changed my approach for.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that, because it's like, I wasn't worried that I wouldn't be able to reach out to you in the future. I wasn't worried that we wouldn't be able to reconnect as friends, or, maintain our friendship and grow our friendship. And so I think that's really beautiful too, that we've had that level of stability between ourselves, where even when you have those moments of taking a step back to reflect and to grow, there's still a knowledge that that person's going to be there, that person still loves you, and vice versa. And you've been such a huge supporter of me and my personal goals. So
thank you, vice versa.
Thank you. Well, I'd love to talk about sisterhood. What does sisterhood mean to you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's been the overarching theme of my entire life. And we actually, with KOA Life, our women's wellness company, have created the sisterhood, which is a community of women where we're all kind of supporting and empowering each other through health, wellness, knowledge, education, all of the good stuff. But being an identical twin, I feel like I have this unique perspective on sisterhood in life. And it really has been, as I mentioned, overarching. So I didn't really have mentors growing up. I was kind of a lone wolf, honestly, throughout high school and childhood. I didn't have a lot of support from friends. I didn't have mentors. I didn't really have that much support from my family when I was younger. So I relied on my sister, honestly, for my biggest support, to show me ways I needed to grow and be accountable, just to be my loyalty, to be my cheerleader. And I was that for her too. So I really want to instill that in other women. I think especially through aging and the processes of evolving, it can be a scary thing. So my mission really at this point in life is, how can I support and empower women to feel like they're not alone and they're together? And, we can create this cohort of women. Back in the day, we were nomadic, right? And before there was the Industrial Revolution, people would band together and help raise each other's children. And we were a tribe. And that was such a beautiful thing. And it's the way it should be, especially with women and with sisters, covenants of women. And now it's really become segregated and individualized. And I'm just hoping that I can kind of bring women back together and create this bond that we're supposed to have.
Yeah, I love that, because you are a force of nature in that way. And that's definitely something that I see you changing the landscape for how women interact with each other. Because too, one thing that you said that stood out to me, first of all, I just want to commend everything that you've done, and the fact that you were a lone wolf and you've grown in this way and you've built all of these things. I think, there's this whole conception around women being competitive towards one another, and women having to, if you have something, I can't have it, and vice versa. Like I said, you've shown up probably the most out of most of my friends. Like you're one of the most generous people with your time, with your knowledge, and it's really beautiful. So I'm really excited to see where your sisterhood,
thank you,
all your sisterhood covenants that you're creating goes.
Thank you. Yeah. And we launch our newest platform end of November. So
I'll be your first user.
At koalife.com. So it's all wellness and empowerment education for women. So I'm really excited for that chapter.
Well, I love that. The other thing too is I learned so much from you. So I just hit 30, and I love that you're launching this, because for me, I wasn't thinking when I hit 30, I was going to think anything of it. Like 30 is still, it's pretty young, but I hit 30 and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm 30, And so I think that there's so many, it comes from society too, and where society tells us our value is, right? And so like when I hit 30, that was mentally big for me. And I've learned so much from you about value and not needing to show up and feel like I always have to add value to something, or where my value lies. So I'd love to hear your perspective on.
Yeah. No, and I remember this conversation with you, and oh my gosh, it's been one of the overarching things that I've had to unlearn, uproot, unhinge in my life, is feeling like I needed to, and you felt this way too, this is how we bonded on the topic, but feeling like in order for me to be enough, lovable, show up for people, be good enough for people, I had to either add value in work, add value in a relationship. I had to perform in a way or be an asset to someone. And if I wasn't giving all of those things and those checklists, then I wasn't of value. But what it comes down to is someone should love me for me, not for what I do for them. So this notion of it's not how much you're doing, but how you do it. And I think when you slow down and you realize it's my innate nature and my compassion, my love, my soul that people should really care about, rather than what can I add to your life, like a checklist. That really changed the game for me. And I know we were specifically talking about in a dating situation.
Yeah, happy to share.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes.
Because this was so healing for me. Like, seriously, I've never had somebody say something like that to me, let alone in the way that you said it. So it was so profound when I listened to your voice note, because I had gone on a date and I was like, oh, I didn't show up with my best energy or whatever. And you sent me a voice note back. Do you want to share what you said in the voice note?
Yeah. So first of all, you had, and I feel that there's this theme in your life a lot where you are a perfectionist, overachiever, obviously highly intellectual. You do the most with everything that you're given, which we are very aligned. We kind of subscribe to that same programming, but there comes a point when you feel like you have to be your best and even on a date, have to be the most intellectual person and really create this identity for the other person, because if you don't, they're not going to love you because you're not going to be enough. And I just reminded you, I'm like, Morgan, first of all, you are so intellectual. You're so beautiful. Most people that look like you are not as beautiful inside and out, and don't have as much as you have, just as a starting point. And second, I'm like, if someone doesn't love you for you, that's not sustainable if they're only loving you for what you bring to the table that way. But this isn't a business transaction or contract. This is just you seeing if energetically you guys are aligned. And so I think going into it that way, it kind of like reframed things for you.
Well, it was also that you said, you were like, you don't have to come to everything and add value.
Yeah.
Especially in dating, right? You don't have to go to every date or every time that you hang out with a significant other or your partner and add value and view it in that way. It's not about helping them build. It's not about saying something so smart that it's profound for them. It's not about, all of these different ways that I think, first of all, as women, but also as like somebody who's type A, you typically show up. And that to me was so profound, because I do tend to feel like personally when I go into interactions, I'm like, okay, how can I help this person? How can I contribute? How can I show up in the best way to, to make their day better or to help them connect the dots? And when you said that, I was like, wait, she's totally right.
Yeah.
When I'm in relation to somebody else, whether it's romantic or a friendship, I don't have to approach it from that way, because somebody should just enjoy me for my energy.
Yeah. And I also think that those days when you are off and are low, that shows the other person's character. How can they actually be there, support me, be compassionate, understanding? Because life isn't always rainbows and butterflies. There's ups and downs, especially with lives like ours, where we are kind of top performing and always like going to the max in every level. So I think seeing how someone can just be with you when you're maybe not at your highest peak and see how that chemistry reacts. I mean, that's a really good telltale sign if they're a nurturer, a lover, and a rock of a man. So I think it's actually a good test, honestly.
What do you mean life isn't always rainbows and butterflies?
No, right?
Life isn't always rainbows and butterflies. What?
I
Okay, I have to unlearn that. No, I'm just kidding. I love that.
Yeah.
So what has been one of the biggest aha moments for you in unlearning?
Yeah. So I think kind of going back to this theme, as I mentioned, it's not how much you're doing, but how you're doing it. Kind of comes back to this notion around doing a little bit less, not having to be performing all the time, not having to just give to other people. And for me, I find that I'm kind of in my own right a healer in my own way. And so it's natural for me to want to put everyone else's needs before mine. And so I kind of put, for a long time, my health and my mindful practice, everything on the back burner, and put everyone else's needs before mine. And so I was working myself to the bone. I wasn't really getting up to move around during the day. I was burning the candle at both ends. I was just giving everything to other people and not filling up my own cup. And so I finally experienced burnout. I hit a wall, just pushing my body and my work and everything in my mind to the limits. And so it took, honestly, me hitting a wall and burnout for me to make those shifts in my life where I had to create space. And so the most beautiful thing was creating space. And that's such a luxury in your life. So when I slowed down and I started doing less, I was able to have the space to incorporate mindful practices, to be more intentional about every decision that I make, to really think of creative problem solving and work I took time to move during the day, to exercise, to biohack, to sauna, to cold plunge. And ultimately, those things actually made me more productive and a better human to the people around me. So I think doing less and being more intentional and creating space was the biggest value that I found in kind of hitting rock bottom emotionally, honestly, and realizing that it's not how much you're doing, it's how you're doing it and what you're doing. So that was a big thing for me, for sure.
I love that because you are so committed to your mindfulness practices and to your daily practices. And I really respect that because I think it's very hard sometimes for people to, first of all, put themselves first. It's really difficult. Second, it's hard for people to stay dedicated to that and stay disciplined. And I think a lot of times when we think about discipline in the sense of showing up every day for your goals, showing up every day for the thing that you want to achieve. But discipline is also having the discipline to prioritize yourself and the discipline to show up for yourself. So I love that you have the discipline.
Yeah. And there's this other idea, and I love this cheesy little metaphor, but you have to put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. It's so true. You have to fill up your own cup to be what I call a net positive to the people around you in your community. And until you establish just a secure, solid base for yourself, you're not going to be putting out the best you to the rest of the world. And you're ultimately not really going to find happiness. Because I found what I was doing in my life is, I built multiple companies. I was making so much money. I had all these employees. I was out all the time, had notoriety, all the things that I thought I really wanted. But I hadn't really filled up my own cup. I didn't have like a very stable foundation at my core. And so I was looking for stimulation, friends, things, more money, more success, all the external things to fill a void, saying I needed them or wanted them to feel stimulated and alive. Even creating more companies and more work for myself made me feel purpose-driven and alive. But really, I wasn't filling up my own cup. And so it wasn't until I created space, as I mentioned, in my life and kind of stripped all those things down that I'm like, wow, I did all these modalities, a lot of spiritual work, mindful practices, and all the things to get to a place where I felt independent. I felt safe just and rooted on my own. And from there, I started to not try so hard to get things in my life and in a way kind of force them away, but I magnetized things towards me. So it became a little bit less effort. It became effortless essentially to kind of get the things that I wanted. And I felt that the people and the opportunities that came into the picture were more value adds and not necessarily things that I needed, So it shifted everything for me. And so some of those practices that I started doing, I sat in ceremony a lot over multiple years. That really expanded my mind and was able to just create new neural pathways. And
I ran into you.
Yeah, you ran into me at ceremony.
Yes, I did. In Joshua Tree, my first ceremony.
That was so funny.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Do you want to explain that ceremony?
Yeah, we were doing peyote in Joshua Tree, and it was my first ceremony, and I was actually really interested in it. And I remember having a therapy session like the hours before I left for Joshua Tree, and I was like, I really want to try plant medicine. I had an invitation randomly. Should I go? Yeah. And I think there's a lot of stigma around it. And I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to carve the time. That was honestly what was going through my mind. I was like, I don't know if I want to carve the time for 2 days of ceremony. And I go
cost
and
benefit analysis.
running through the SWOT analysis, the cost benefit in my mind. And I go and you show up and you were there. And I was like, whoa, hey, what's up? And so, but that's something that you have been, as a part of your practices, that's something that you've been very experienced with.
Yeah.
So I love.
Yeah, that was such a trip to see you out there. And it was funny because we saw a few other mutual friends very randomly in the middle of the desert. It was a beautiful ceremony. And so I started doing plant medicine and ceremony about 20 years ago when I was dealing with just a lot of stuff from my past. I kind of grew up in a chaotic environment and I wanted to be intentional about trying to unattach from stories that I had in the past. It's another big thing that I had to unlearn is I am not my story. And that kind of like was the biggest mind shift for me is I am not my story. And the most liberating thing is unattaching from that and creating a new narrative. And especially as women, because we are just dialed into this creation energy because we can create life. We can create any narrative we want. So why focus on some bad story from the past when we have this whole future? So that was another great thing that actually that learning came from ceremony. So started a long time ago. And now I don't really need plant medicine. I just have adopted meditation, prayer, yoga as sort of my moving meditation. And yeah, I do a lot of practices like that, breath work, that allow me to kind of get to similar states and really process what I'm going through and just have a second to stop and slow down and be more intentional about things. And for me and someone like you that's really fast paced, those little moments where we can have me time and stop and process and connect and dial in, they make a huge difference.
There's so many different places that I want to take this. I'm like, okay, where should I start? So I'm going to start at the end of what you said and then work backwards. So the I am not my story component, that's very profound. And so how did you come to that conclusion? But also, how does that show up? How did that show up in your life? And for listeners listening to the podcast, how can you encourage them to question the stories that they tell themselves? Because I think so often with stories, we assume the story is true. And especially if it's something that we've lived our whole lives or a narrative that we've been told our whole lives, it's really hard for us to know what the story is and if it's a story. So,
yeah, I think the first question someone should ask themselves is, what's the common denominator? And usually it's you. And that's a hard thing, honestly, to look at, because it's really hard for the ego, and it's hard to look in the mirror and see, oh my gosh, I am creating this chaos in my life. For me, my story was I'm surviving, not thriving. So I was on fight or flight mode 24/7. So it actually was a skill set for me in a startup environment. But my story was that I had to react under pressure. So you think about it, if you're in this situation where you're under attack, you have to be super laser focused in the moment, be able to be reactive, essentially, and you don't have the space and time to be intentional and sit on an idea or a decision. You have to react in the moment, be laser focused. It's why I wasn't really good at multitasking, but I was so good at diving so deep, passionately into something and being present. So my present moment was I'm always in the state of chaos, fight or flight, under a pressure cooker, essentially. And it came from just a lifetime when I was younger of growing up in my home, just kind of in a tumultuous situation. And there was a lot of fighting. There's a lot of kind of chaos at home. And then it even dates back to my parents' upbringing and my lineage and my family, like that energetic energy. It transcends through the womb, through your life. There's so much that people carry on. So I had this like just crazy, I'm always like running around under pressure working. And so I had to stop and unlearn that, which was the biggest gift for me, because I noticed that when things were really chill and mellow, I felt uneasy because it wasn't familiar for me. So I would almost create in romantic relationships chaos. I would create more work for myself. I would throw myself into a million projects. I would make miracles happen at work under pressure, but I was kind of calling in this like super busy, chaotic energy. And so it really took me doing plant medicine, ceremony, my mindful practices when I experienced burnout to be like, okay, what is the common denominator? And it is me that's sort of creating my perspective and environment. And now a beautiful thing I say is love is my life language, So my presence, it's actually this beautiful, like loving environment instead of chaotic. And so I'm able to make better choices. I call in better men, call in better friendships. The opportunities I call in are like aligned with what I'm doing with KOA Life. So it's been a blessing in a way.
I love that. And one of the things that I was going to say is that a lot of times as humans and as people, we would rather choose familiar chaos rather than unfamiliar peace. And so that is such a hard thing, I think, for people to step out of, because it's what we know. And even if we want this thing, like even if we want peace, or even if we want, a different dynamic for ourselves or the way we show up in the world, because it feels unfamiliar, it creates a lot of like that internal disconnect. And then something else that you said that was really interesting for me is I read this study, or I heard of this study that, when it comes to things passed down in our lineage, there was a study of rats, and basically what they would do is they would, shock the rats, but then it wasn't what the rats would do that were shocked. It was the babies of the rats. And this is a very, I do not promote animal cruelty for the record. But the babies of the rats would then be scared of the device, and which again, I don't promote animal cruelty at all, but that to me is so it's very reflective of the way that our lineage, like we don't always understand where things come from. Sometimes it's stuff that we see growing up. Sometimes it's, and I also came from a very chaotic environment. So I had so much unlearning to do around that. But sometimes it comes from our lineage, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
So do you want to hit on that?
Well, first of all, I'm proud of you. Oh my gosh, this Morgan version 2.0. I absolutely
3.0. We're on 3.0.
Absolutely love. I've seen all the versions.
Yeah.
This one's
maybe
amazing.
I'm on 6.0.
Really proud of you, by the way.
Thank you.
You've done a lot of great work. So it's very interesting. And I think you don't really notice, you're not attuned or aware of how lineages, especially for women, where this where all of this junk can come from. So that's why I love doing things like plant medicine or working with healers. I work with a lot of intuitives. I do a lot of meditation, things where you can be introspective and kind of time travel in a way without sounding too woo-woo, but it does really help you pinpoint where it came from.
We can get woo-woo.
Yeah. I also think it's important to just acknowledge that like women back in the day were burned at the stake for being leaders, medicine women, all of it. So with women in general, there's this lineage of trauma, fear, all of it, and it passes down to all of us who are leading, who are alphas, who are trying to take a stance, because energetically we're trying to be suppressed in society. Mm-hmm. And so there is this kind of notion that's underlying, and a lot of women don't know where it comes from. And so that's why when we get too big or too powerful, it's like everything's trying to put us back in our place. So my sister and I are intentionally trying to break that lineage with us in our cycle, hopefully our children, what we're doing with the sisterhood with KOA, and shift that dynamic and create power and strength and all of that with our sisterhood. So, which
you are, and you will continue to. Yes, I'm very excited for that. Mm-hmm. And something else I wanted to touch on was you've talked so much about the growth that you've done, all of the unlearning that you've done. You were so successful even back then. You're so successful now. So at what point did you make those shifts within yourself? And was it after you had, a couple companies and before this one? How did it impact the way that your work has gone, your life is right now? Tell me what shifts have happened.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I've had success kind of before, the old Lex and the new Lex. They're just very, very different. So just to go back into kind of a really quick synopsis of my career, because a lot of my life is entangled, even personal life with career. I'm sure you get that as being a boss as well.
My whole life is one. Exactly.
It's all one. But so I started my first company in 2008 called Navin, an apparel brand with my twin sister. We co-founded, and then later on we partnered with Revolve Clothing and grew it to a really big company. But it was so interesting because I started the company 8 months out of university. I graduated from Pepperdine, and I started it in my front room. And I did a business plan, got a $10,000 investment, thought I was going to do a t-shirt line. My best friend was my only employee and my assistant. And we ended up growing it to a really big multi-million-dollar company. We had 40 employees selling to 500 stores. Grew it really big. It became a celebrity brand. Was such a good time. But it's interesting because, as I mentioned, I had all of these things. I had notoriety in my own industry, kind of notoriety and fame, which was really fun at the time. I made a lot of money, more money than I've ever really made in my life. It was super fun. I was at every event, had all the things that someone could want when they think about building a company and their kind of dream career life. But I wasn't fulfilled inside. And I was constantly looking for more and more stimulation everywhere because I wasn't fulfilled inside. And I think I was filling the void of the work I really had to do from the way that I was brought up with things and money and people and entourages and all this stuff that didn't really fulfill me in the end. So I think it was when I experienced burnout with Navin after about, I think it was 10 years of growing the company.
10 years? Oh, 10
wow. years of growing the company.
That's impressive.
I was doing
No, that's not impressive. That's what we're unlearning.
That's what we're unlearning.
That's not
well, I was doing the work along the way. Some of it was subconscious. I didn't really know. But that's the thing is every bad relationship, every trauma, every hurdle that you overcome, those are all part of the life lessons. So you kind of have to just go with it and throw yourself into it. But 10 years in, I crashed emotionally, physically. it just caved. And so that's when I found plant medicine and healers and therapists, and I was able to start really diving in there. And then when I was running my company, Navin, as I mentioned, my whole world was sort of this, I thrive in this pressure cooker kind of environment, which was phenomenal for work. It was so good to create, magical moments and bring in revenue last minute. And, everything was like fly by the seat of my pants. But then with KOA Life, this new company, this is after I had kind of transmuted that way of living. And I now have this like sort of peaceful, really intentional, a little bit slower pace in my life, which is a beautiful thing because I'm now thinking about purpose and intention. And is this serving the greater good? Am I healing people? Every decision I make, it's, being from a creative place, intentional place, instead of just like in the moment and reacting to things. So it's a totally different journey and a different experience. And it's been really beautiful to just wake up every morning and be like, wow, I feel so good. I've a little bit less on my plate in the morning and when I go to sleep, but I go to bed and I wake up feeling excited instead of stressed out and burnt out. And I love that part of my life, but this is sustainable. And I feel like I'm finally really stepping into womanhood the way it should be. Because the feminine energy is really that graceful, fluid, water-like energy where you don't have to try so hard for things to come to you. And as queer women, we're so much in our masculine because masculine is like, let me have this project and be goal-oriented and be tough and strong. But to step into the feminine is really important because that's where you create all the magic.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. So many things I want to say. First of all is something that I adopted as a personal philosophy that came from plant medicine. The ceremony that we did together was I am the magic I seek in the universe. Because I think so often we're thinking about how can we make something happen? But what we don't realize is that it's actually ourselves and it's how you show up in the moment. And when you're aligned internally, the magic happens. So I am the magic. I don't have to go look for the magic. I don't have to go, fabricate something. And I love that you are talking so much about how, that shift has happened for you, because I actually had a similar moment as well where, and, to get a little bit personal, but you know this about me. Yeah, you know everything. My mom passed away. It was really hard because I had so many coaches who were like, I would get on a coaching session. I'd be like, I don't feel like I accomplished enough today. They'd be like, Morgan, you had like 4 client calls. You just signed a contract and like you were in, you did 5 interviews. Like you did so much this week that most people don't do in a month. And like, what are you talking about? Where's the disconnect? And I always felt internally like I wasn't doing enough. It didn't matter how much I did or what I achieved. It wasn't doing enough. And then when my mom passed away, it was like, I had to slow down. But in the having to slow down, I mean, first of all, I had never learned to ask for help. Yeah. And then learning to ask for help, I realized that it's so beautiful to have a community around you and to have people who show up for you and that you don't have to be, I used to say like, I want 3 of this. I want 5 of this. I want 5 companies. I want, whatever. I realized I don't need to have 5 companies. Like it's better to have a company and to have time for friends and have time for yourself and to have time to meditate, and I think that what you said there really resonates with me. One thing I would like to say is that your products really work.
Thank you.
Because when I used them the other week, my skin was perfect.
That's true. The cleanser, use the peptide cleanser. Yeah. I'm so glad you like it. Yeah. So this is our new peptide infused skincare that comes out in January. You got a little bit.
I'll be the first to buy it. Yeah, I'll be the first to buy it.
And I'm really excited because KOA Life focuses on supporting women to thrive, not just survive aging. And so the main issues that happen with aging are skin issues and then weight management issues. So we focus on skin health and treating the root cause of skin health. And then our topical products have peptides like NAD+, copper peptide, all those good things that really help to heal the skin barrier, help with wrinkles, dark spots, acne, all of it. As someone that suffered from really bad cystic acne, I wanted to create something that was not only healthy, but was actually effective for the skin. So excited for these to come out.
Well, I like it. I can't wait to use it because I have, done cortisone shots to help with cystic acne. Yeah. No, and it's so bad because it messes up your skin. And I think that so many times we don't realize the impacts of stress on our body. Yeah. And we will sacrifice our own health or our own wellness for our goals.
Yeah.
And then we just think that like there's an easy solution for everything. Like, you know, and I think we see so many easy solutions in society for every problem, but all of the problems come from stress.
Yeah.
And so something I love is that you're focused on the internal and really healing from the inside out. And something else I wanted to note is that you have been just as successful with KOA Life. So it's like, even after you made these shifts, it's not like you've stepped back from your success. I mean, you were on billboards on Sunset. You were recently,
it's been fun.
In New York. Yeah,
thank you. You know, it's been fun. It's just been like, I feel like I've lived 20 different lives. I'm sure you can relate. So it's just a whole different way of doing things. And mind you, anything anyone says on a podcast or Instagram is like 80-20 rule. You know, it's not every day is not perfect, and you're continually growing, and we're continually doing this sort of metaphoric autophagy of our life, you know, strengthening the good stuff and weeding out the bad. But it's just been an amazing process to be like, wow, I'm really proud of the person that I've become now, and how that trickles into the rest of my life and my work life, and just the peace that I feel in so many ways. And you can do more doing less if you do it the right way, which is kind of just really the whole learning from that.
I love that.
Yeah.
How would you encourage listeners when they wake up in the morning? What question would you encourage them to ask themselves if they're starting out on their journey of, you know, of learning themselves, of personal development and of growth? Yeah,
I think there's a big question that just overarching in life, you should always ask yourself every single day, like, what fuels my soul, right? Because if we have one day left to live, we're not going to care about our to-do list at all. It's going to be what really fuels me, not what I do to make money, not what I do to make other people happy, not what I do because society tells me I should, what actually lights you up and fuels your soul. For me, I am a lover of life. I go like all in with things, super passionate. I have to have my hobbies. I have to have like deep, deep love for everything that I'm doing. And that really lights me up. And that comes down to having a spirit-led life and having a beautiful community around me that are my sisters and that I feel like are family. That's so important to me. But making sure that you have that in everything you're doing is as important as a career. And honestly, the more you love what you're doing, the more you're going to attract things that are super aligned.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. And then something else that I really want to touch on, because I think that you're very good at it, is this whole, again, this concept of unlearning. So something that is very profound for me that I am fortunate to witness, which is why I wanted to have amazing hosts like, or guests like you on the podcast, is that we see so often in society these paths that are laid out for us. And when I say paths that are laid out for us, I mean, we always look for role models. We always look for somebody to look up to.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they say if you're on a journey or you're walking a path and the steps in front of you are, you know, present or visible, you're not necessarily walking your own path. And I really admire the way that you have literally architected your life. You've created your own life and created this path for yourself. And when you create a path for yourself, again, you're doing it from inside. You're doing it internally. You're not watching someone else and following in their footsteps. So do you want to touch a little bit on how you've done that?
Yes, I love this. Well, obviously, my modalities and the efficacy of my modalities are anecdotal, right? Because I've never lived in someone else's shoes. And I don't even know if people always want to be like me, but in my life, I do. In my life, I've always gone like 2000% into everything that I do. I love just diving in, having passion. As I mentioned, I just am a lover of life. And so I go full in. But I think the most important thing to remember if you're trying to pave your own path is to have trust. The universe actually does have us and spirit has us. So to trust in you and trust the process. We don't see that everything is perfectly divinely aligned for us until we're on the other side of it. So even those like struggles, bad relationships, the hurdles, they all have a point and they're all lessons and teachings. It's life's boot camp. But we don't see that until after we're on the other side and we see, wow, it's beautiful over here. So I'd say have trust in the process. You also can't skip the hard work. It takes work and it takes that journey for things to stick. I know because I work in the weight management industry as well with KOA Life. We treat the skin and then we treat the body, mainly weight management. As women age, it's hard to lose weight and gain muscle and optimize the body. And so if I was going to give someone a GLP-1 or a weight loss peptide, if they just go back to eating really poorly after they're off the peptide, it's not going to stick. But if someone has made the shifts in their life, has changed their emotional relationship to food, has started a workout program, they've put in the work, so they're going to stick to it. So they're going to have a higher success rate to keep the weight off and be healthier and happier in the future. So remember that anything good like that's going to take the journey and the work. So that's important. So trust the process, do the work, and then third, have courage. Just go in, have courage. You honestly have nothing to lose. You have to be okay with hearing no, with rejection, with quote unquote failure, because it's part of the process, but it just builds grit. And when you get to the other side and you accomplish, the hit of dopamine that you get from that and the feeling of, wow, I can do anything and I'm so independent, I can literally achieve anything, is the best feeling in the entire world.
I love that. Can I join Lexi's bootcamp?
Yes.
I love that you hit on trust as well, because I think a lot of times it's hard for us to trust ourselves and it's hard for us to trust the process. And something that I really had to work on in my friendship journey, but also in my journey in relation to the world, is this concept of trust and self-trust. And I think a lot of times when we think about trust, something for me that I learned was I always thought I had trust issues because of my relationships with my parents and, other people. And I realized trust issues all stem from internal.
Yeah.
So those may have been things that help trigger it or build on the trust issues, but it wasn't about me necessarily learning how to trust other people. It was me learning how to trust myself and trust that I would make good decisions in friendships and trust that I would figure things out and trust that I would, it was me and I had to learn to trust me. And through trusting myself, I learned to trust everyone else.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. And the same is true, honestly, in romantic relationships as well. It's crazy. And I think women have this innate sense of intuition, but a lot of times we kind of cloud it with all the stuff that we have to go through in society or what society tells us. But in relationship, for instance, my last relationship, though we're really good friends now, platonically we work, but romantically it just didn't work because there just wasn't a level of trust. And it came down to, we weren't aligned in a lot of ways. I felt like I always had to be giving this value to the relationship, or I had a checklist, which kind of dimmed my confidence in a way. When I honed it back into remembering the parts of me that were beautiful and that were strong and that were amazing before the relationship, I started to trust that, wow, I don't have to try for this person to love me. I trust that I am great on my own and that the right person is going to come in and be aligned with me. So I think that's true with work opportunities, friendships, everything in life, really. Yeah. And that's about creating that solid foundation or that home first and foremost. So kind of what I was saying, fill your own cup up first. It's so true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that because, again, when it comes back to filling your own cup, it also comes back to discipline. So circling back to the beginning of the conversation, you were talking about, you have to do the work. It's not just, you do something, it's a magic pill. You have to do the work as well. And so it's the discipline to commit to yourself. It's the self-trust in terms of the growing. It's the questioning your own internal stories and your own internal beliefs. And it's really choosing the life that you want to live, choosing what does it look like if today were your last day? Yeah. What would you want that to look like? Yeah. And for you, it sounds like love, just loving your life, loving the people around you. Obviously, I have a lot of love for you. So I'm glad to love the people around me. Mm-hmm. What else would you like to share on the podcast today?
Yeah, I didn't mention one thing is doing the work also has, and what really has been an effective modality for me that I incorporated into my life has also been health and wellness. I think your emotional body and your physical body are so intertwined. And so when we take care of this amazing vessel that God has given us and we strengthen our body and we can create a body that's performing peak performance, we're able to just do so much more and have more mental clarity, incorporate movement, eat clean, really have discipline when it comes to our health and wellness. For me, that has been a huge game changer as well, and prioritizing my health. As I mentioned before, I used to work 10 hours straight and not take time for movement, not take time to go to the gym, to go to yoga, to make healthy meals. I was ordering Postmates. I was just kind of doing everything to be efficient at work. But when I switched that up and I started putting my health and my wellness number one, it changed everything for me. I lost 15 pounds of inflammation from stress in my body, which is so crazy to think because I was in pretty good shape before, but it was literal inflammation and stress in my muscle tissues and fiber that I lost. I got rid of my brain fog. I helped my vision. My hair got thicker and shinier. My skin got better. Everything got better. And it was by prioritizing my health and my wellness number one. And then everything else kind of got better from there too. So I think that can't be overlooked. And I just encourage people to get up and move during the day, take little breaks, take time for them. It's so important to your overall just happiness and daily joy.
Yeah, I completely agree with you because again, that's something I've had to learn is I don't need to take hair growth supplements and do all these things to get rid of, my breakouts when I'm stressed. It's just control your stress. And how do you control your stress? By not pushing yourself beyond your limits, right? Like it's great to perform, but you don't have to overperform everywhere.
Yeah.
What is the biggest thing? So we've touched a lot on unlearnings. What is the biggest unlearning that you want the audience to take away?
Oh, wow. That's a big one.
I know. Surprise. Surprise question.
So I would say the most important thing, and I know I've touched on this, but the most important thing is what lights you up. How are you going to work on you first? Because if you are the strongest, best version of you, what you output to the world is going to be much more magical, way brighter, way shinier, just more impactful to your community and people around you. So I always say, start with you and work outwards.
And I love that because I think that's very reflective in the way that you create as well. Like the shoot that we did. Yeah. I remember showing up and I was like, this is so creative. How did they even come up with this idea? Thanks. And I think it's, especially when you live in a world or in a society where you're thinking about, okay, how do I do this quickly? How do I move, and you bring your mind out of the space of creativity, out of the space of not copying the beauty that you see in the world, but actually creating the beauty that others then get to appreciate.
Yeah.
So
thank you for recognizing that. And by the way, guys, Morgan is the face of our campaign. So there's
I'm a model now.
one of the models for our campaign. We wanted to really represent all types of people. And so we all age groups and just real women that are bosses and inspiring to us. So we have a model that's about 51 and she's beautiful and just powerful. You're a beautiful boss and powerful, look like an absolute goddess in the shoot. And then we have some other younger models. So it was really a nice experience to see this dimension between age groups and beauty and standards and all of that with the campaign.
Yeah. And I love that you did that because when I showed up, I saw the intentionality behind how you created that. So I think it goes back to what you're saying about intentionality and decisions. Because I think, it's not that, it's not when a lot of brands get kind of backlash for not doing that. I think it comes down to just not moving so fast that you're not thinking about it. You're just thinking, I have to get this campaign out, but you show up so intentionally that reflects into all of the work that you do. So
thank you so much. Yeah, it's been the new kind of mode that I'm operating from, which has been such a gift because when you have space, it gives you flexibility and freedom. And as I mentioned, women are so connected to this creator energy. It's when we can really have time to hone into that, amazing things happen.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I'm practicing being more like water. That has been
fluid and graceful.
Yes, exactly. That has been an internal practice for me. So thank you for the reminder. So to close, I'd love to just recap on who you are and what you've accomplished and what you have coming up. What should we look forward to? Where can we find you?
Yeah, so I'm so excited. This has been, I would say, just an accumulation of my life's work and personal and career, and all of it is what we've put into KOA Life. So we launched our KOA Life clinic end of November, which will feature some of our new skincare. We have an over-the-counter skincare line already that's sold in Macy's, Target, CVS, Ipsy, BoxyCharm, a lot of those great retailers.
So she is still equally as successful, just an evolved version of herself. I love it.
Yeah, I'd like to say it's a more conscious, intentional approach to what I'm doing, although I had so much fun with my other companies, but this one really means a lot to me. I'm also 41 and was able to heal my skin issues with our products. And so the KOA Life Clinic, it launches in November, soft launch. In January is our full launch, and we're basically treating the root cause of skin issues. Partnered with an amazing pharmacy. So we do things like peptide therapies and hormone therapies and help restore dysbiosis in the gut, because it's usually where a lot of the issues are from. So we treat internal, external beauty. And then we also are helping women with weight management as they age for our body clinic. So helping with things like peptides and nutrition plans and lifestyle hacks to get you to a good place and get you loving your body again.
I love it. Where can we find it?
So it's thatkoalife.com. And then on Instagram, my twin sister, who isn't here today, but we do everything together, including run our companies together. We're the Navin Twins. Navin Twins on Instagram. Basically, our entire life story and cumulative work and all of that is there. So you can check us out there. And then it's That KOA Life on Instagram as well.
I love it. Well, and we'll have it in the handles. So everybody who would like to check out your products, highly recommend. Again, I accidentally tried them at the shoot. The next day I was like, wow, my skin looks the best it's ever looked. And I just used your cleanser, right?
Cleanser and serum. Yeah. And you left the cleanser on for like 3 minutes. So I guess
it works.
Try it for a few minutes.
Yeah. Leave it on for 3 minutes. That's the secret. And then put on the serum afterwards and your skin will be perfect the next day. So highly recommend it. Really excited for everyone to check out your products. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your insights, your wisdom, your vulnerability. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Of course. And glad, very thankful for our sisterhood. Excited for 6 more years and more beyond that.
Let's go.
And we're in 7.0 all the way up to 12.0. Yes. All the versions.
Yes.
I like to 0.0 my versions. Awesome. Thank you, Lex.